With us today, Councilman Mark McAndrew. We have Councilman Kyle Donahue. We have Councilman Tom Schuster. We have Councilwoman Dr. Jessica Rothchild. We have Solicitor Kevin Hayes. We have Lori Reed, our city clerk, and we have Jeff Horvath here from the Scranton Times. Okay, so glad everybody could be with us tonight. Looks like the Brady Bunch here once again. Okay, let's get started. I just want to go over a few things and then I'll turn it over to Kevin and then turn it over to Lori to see if they have anything, and then to all of you if you have anything that you'd like to discuss. First thing I want to mention is we do need, talking with Lori and Kevin today, we do need a public hearing for agenda item 5C, where we're amending the administrative code. So that is going to be held next Thursday, June 4th at 5:45. So the that ad will be placed in the newspaper. Also wanted to announce that our meeting will be rescheduled next week. We would usually have it on Tuesday. We're gonna reschedule it to Thursday, same time, 5:45 caucus, or 5:45 public hearing, and then we'll have the caucus immediately thereafter. And then we do have the 6:30 regular meeting next Thursday, June 4th. And that the reason for that is because of Election Day, which we have discussed in the past. The other thing, just in terms of the legislation, 5B on the agenda tonight, just looking at the iPad here, is basically a piece of legislation that is moving a traffic light at the corner of Jefferson Ave and Linden Street, because there has been a lot of issues there with vehicles striking that traffic pole because of the turn there. So they're going to remove that, place it back further. They sent it down with an emergency certificate attached because it's a major safety issue there, not only for vehicles, but for pedestrians who are walking by. So that came down to us, so that we'll introduce that tonight. And then the second piece of legislation is amending the administrative code to require council approval should the administration at any time in the future want to increase the salary or add a job classification to the budget outside of the budget approval process. So we've been through, the discussions on that, so I won't go into it much further until fifth order or until the agenda item comes up. But there's several reasons for that. So talk about that in a few minutes. Other than that, I don't have anything. Kevin, do you have anything that you'd like to add or discuss?
Bill, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kevin.
Okay. I could field any questions that anyone has with regard to the legislation, which is the amendment to Section 13 of the city's administrative code. So if anyone has any questions regarding that amendment, I'd be happy to discuss that now, or if you prefer, I could discuss it during the regular meeting. Bill, do you want me to go over that now, or?
Yeah, you could go over it now. That's fine.
Okay. So at the request of council, I drafted legislation which essentially amends Section 13 of the city's administrative code. Currently, this section of the code permits the business administrator to transfer any unexpended balance of an appropriated item to increase the salary of an employee, including department heads, from the salary that was approved by council during the budget process. This transfer of funds is currently permitted under the code without council approval, as long as it's within the transfer of funds is within a department. Council had determined that this practice, where the business administrator would transfer funds to increase salaries of certain employees without council's approval or without the public input, undermined the budget approval process, which is established by the city's home rule charter. So this amended ordinance, which is on tonight's agenda, requires council's approval prior to funding a new job classification, which is not identified in the annual budget, or increasing the salary of a job classification from the salary appropriated in the annual budget for the fiscal year. So that's what the legislation would essentially do that's on the agenda for first reading tonight.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Does anybody have any questions about that for Kevin? No? Okay. Kevin, anything else?
Yes, I spoke. I know the issue of the all-terrain vehicles came up during last council meeting, and the members of council had inquiries as to what the law is relating to ATV usage on city roads and state highways. So I could tell you that Section 7721 of the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code prohibits the operation of all-terrain vehicles, also known as ATVs, on any street or highway unless said roadway is designated for operation of ATVs. I could tell you that the city of Scranton has not designated any of its streets for ATV usage. There are limited exceptions to this general rule of prohibiting the operation of ATVs on public roads, and that includes when it's necessary to cross a bridge or culvert. ATVs are allowed to cross a street or highway as long as it's done at a 90-degree angle. And during periods of an emergency declaration, ATVs are allowed. However, the current emergency declarations issued by the governor of Pennsylvania and the mayor do not expand the confined usage of ATVs to allow them to be operated on our city streets or public or state highways. I spoke with Scranton Police Chief Carl Graziano earlier today. He's aware of the ongoing issue with the ATVs on our streets, and he intends on exploring enforcement of that problem and that issue over the summer months. So he's aware of it. It's really a national problem. It's very difficult to enforce, but we did talk about some things that we could do to address what seems to be an uptick in this issue over the last few months.
Yeah, I actually, I haven't had a chance to call back Mayor Burke from Dunmore, but I know Dunmore, I'm assuming that's what Mayor Burke was calling me about, but I just didn't get a chance to call him back yet. I will tonight or tomorrow. But they had a lot of issues with ATVs. And again, I want to reiterate this. I understand that, a lot of people in our community have ATVs, and if you have one, you want to ride it. But the calls that I was getting was from people who, many people who have medical conditions, who are now working from home because of the pandemic. And, some of these people who are riding the ATVs are not, being very courteous to these people who have issues and, or out walking their dogs or their children around the neighborhood. And it's become very dangerous in many situations. So thanks, Kevin, for looking into that. We'll, I know Chief Graziano is always on top of things, so we'll continue to follow up with him in the police department. Anything else, Kev?
So I know last council meeting there was some requests for information from the administration. Those included from Councilman McAndrew requested information regarding Elizabeth Leo's time that she has expended in a supervisory or management position role in the Department of Human Resources. I spoke with Solicitor Uffberg earlier today, and I want to say within the last 20 minutes, we received information which is presumably responsive to that request. You have to understanding that Attorney Uffberg's firm, just like all the other businesses in Lackawanna County, are basically shut down. So he indicated that the normal billing practices that he would be employing, it's impossible to follow at this time. With that said, he did make an effort to provide information which is responsive to this request. To be honest with you, I haven't had the opportunity to review it. But he did indicate that if anybody has questions regarding this information, that they can feel free to contact him. So that's you should all have that in your email.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I saw it, but I didn't get a chance to review it either.
Right.
Thank you for that.
And then earlier today, I know Council President Gaughan had requested copies of the attendance reports for the city department heads from 2014 to the present, and we were provided with those earlier today as well. And I know those were circulated by Ms. Reed.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then in response to the requests of Councilman Gaughan and Donahue, I reached out to the city solicitor requesting an update on the city's contract with Northeast Revenue Services. Specifically, council members wanted an update on whether the city would be terminating the contract this year. I have not received any information in response to that request, although the city solicitor did indicate that something went out late last week. I don't know, Councilman Gaughan, if you received anything.
No,
regarding. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that she had stated that, but unless it went into my junk mail or the spam, I didn't receive anything. So
I had indicated that you did not receive it, so I requested that it be resent.
Okay, great.
I think that's it for me right now.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Does anyone else have anything for Solicitor Hayes?
I guess to follow up on the ATV question, Solicitor Hayes, when you spoke with Chief Graziano, did he say whether we were able to move those concrete barriers on East Mountain?
Well, we talked about the areas that are that have been reported as having the most usage of ATVs, and trying to come up with plans for that specific area. And he said that he's open to suggestions, and that being one of them. Another discussion we had was regarding additional signage in those areas, making it clear that city streets and state highways are not open terrain for these ATVs to use, and that they could result in they will result in fines. So he is Chief Graziano is aware of the issue. He indicated it's been an ongoing problem. Obviously, that there is for whatever reasons, maybe it's the emergency declaration that people have misconstrued to believe that they're permitted to use these ATVs. But he's aware that there's an uptick, and I think he'd be open to council's suggestions on whatever enforcement ideas you have.
And I think when me and you spoke about it, you had said with increased signage, if someone were to be ticketed and sent to the magistrate, it would help us with enforcing that, because it would be the signage would be up that states that you cannot ride these in this area.
Right. I mean, ignorance of the law is never a defense, but you could rest assured that if somebody is arrested for riding an ATV on one of our streets, they're going to say, well, I didn't know that was prohibited, and if we have signage, we can obviously, it further refutes that position. So that was a suggestion I had, and we can work with the administration and the chief to come up with a plan for putting signage in those areas where we identified as having a lot of ATV use.
All right, that sounds good. Is that something we need to request?
No, I think we can circle back with the chief and with the administration to come up with a plan and see if we have funding to order those signs.
Okay. And in the conversation with the chief, we just talk about that concrete barrier, whether that could be moved or.
Right. And you're talking about in the area at the base of East Mountain Road?
Yes. I think a lot of the complaints, I mean, like Mr. Gaughan said, people that had health issues, for noise and dust and things like that. But a lot of the complaints I got were also due to garbage being thrown and left in the areas after these people had left.
Right.
Keep a lot of that out of there.
Right. So yeah, we'll have to look at it. The ATVs are technically allowed on private property as long as they have the authorization of the private property owner. So we have to just figure out where these barriers are and where we can put barriers on city property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Schuster. Kevin, anything else?
I think that's all for now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. Lori, do you have anything?
Thank you. I was going to mention about next week, but you've already noted, with election day falling on Tuesday. So the only other thing I have is just regarding tonight's agenda, with the emergency certificate attached to item 5B. Once that piece is introduced, obviously, there should be a motion then to move it to 6th and 7th orders for a final vote. And
Okay,
that's all I
thank
have.
you. Okay, and Lori, in terms of next week with public comment, we'll be taking that up until Thursday, the day of the meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, so I'll make sure to mention that at the regular meeting.
Mhm.
I don't have anything else, so we'll go around the Zoom room now and see if anybody has anything of the general business here. Councilman Schuster?
I think Solicitor Hayes covered most of it, so none at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Donahue?
Just in regards to public comment, I know when we're normally in council chambers, we ask people to provide, their name and address that they live in the city. Ms. Reed, are we doing that for this form of public comment?
Everyone who submits a comment, their name is included. Some have an address, others do not. However, some I am familiar with, and I do know that they are city residents. But,
Okay, thank you.
But everyone supplies their name. In fact, I did receive one, and I went back to the person and asked them to provide their name, and they did.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're, going by the same sort of rules we use in chambers here too. Thank you.
Okay, great. Dr. Rothchild?
No, I don't have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman McAndrew?
I'm okay. Kevin did cover a great deal of it for me, so I appreciate that.
Okay. I don't have anything else, as I said, so we will reconvene here. We can take a little break from Hollywood Squares, and we'll see everybody at 6:30. Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone, I'd like to call this public meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Let us keep all of our law enforcement officials in our thoughts and prayers tonight, who are currently attempting to locate a dangerous criminal wanted for 2 murders in Connecticut, who was recently spotted in our area in the Poconos. Let us also take a special moment of silence tonight, as we have for the last few months, for all the people in our community and throughout the world who are suffering or who have tragically passed away from the coronavirus. Let us think about them and their families at this time, that they may find peace. Let us think also about the doctors, nurses, researchers, and all medical professionals and first responders who seek to heal and help those affected and who put themselves at risk in the process. May they find protection and peace. Whether we are here at home or abroad, surrounded by many people suffering from this illness, or only a few, let us stick together, endure together, mourn together, persist and prepare together, and in place of our anxiety, let us continue to hope and to find peace. Thank you. Ms. Carrera, roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mr. McAndrew,
Present.
Dr. Rothchild,
Here.
Mr. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Gaughan.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Carrera. There will be a motion to move item 5B to 6th and 7th orders for a final vote based on the attached emergency certificate. Mrs. Reed, can you please dispense with the reading of the minutes?
Thank you. Third order. 3A, resumes of City of Scranton Directors of Human Resources, Department of Public Works, and Office of Economic and Community Development mayoral appointees. 3B, correspondence received from Mayor Paige G. Cognetti, dated May 14, 2020, regarding Executive Director of Office of Economic and Community Development appointments. 3C, correspondence received from City Treasurer dated May 8, 12, and 13, 2020, regarding no tax refuse delinquencies for mayoral appointments. 3D, minutes of the non-uniform municipal pension board meeting held April 15, 2020. 3E, minutes of the composite pension board meeting held April 15, 2020. 3F, agenda for the non-uniform municipal pension board meeting held May 20, 2020. 3G, fuel card analysis received from Office of the City Controller dated April 23, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Are there any comments on any of the third order items?
I have a quick one. 3G, the fuel card analysis from December through April. I'm glad to see that the usage has gone down considerably.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew. Anyone else on third order items? Okay. If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I have one. The salad shop, which is located at 316 Penn Avenue, will have their grand opening tomorrow, May 27th. Due to COVID-19, they will initially be operating on limited hours and will be open Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. for takeout, curbside pickup, and online ordering. They have also partnered with Grubhub for delivery service. So I'd just like to encourage everyone to check it out and to also keep supporting our city's small businesses in any way they can during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any announcements?
Yes, I have two. The Wright Center for the Community Health, in conjunction with the Lackawanna County Commissioners, are hosting 2 blood drives for the American Red Cross on Friday, June 12th from 11 to 4, and Friday, July 31st from 12 to 5. And this will be at the Wright Center's new facility on 501 South Washington Avenue. Please sign up today. Appointments are being given in 15-minute intervals. You may register online or by calling the Red Cross of NEPA. They're telling us that this is there's a critical need for blood right now. Also, Friends of the Poor, Family to Family, and the Weinberg Food Bank is having another COVID-19 emergency drive-through food giveaway, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, May 27th. It's from 2:30 to 5:30 at the PNC Field in Music. All attendants must remain in their cars as usual, and food bags will be placed directly into their cars. This is open to the public. What's required now, I guess, is to have your zip code, number of children, adults, elderly in your household is now required. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McAndrew. Anyone else? Any announcements?
Yes, I have an announcement. I was going to mention the salad shop grand opening tomorrow too. I'm pretty excited about that. I've been wanting a salad place in Scranton for a while now. Over in Wilkes-Barre, they have a few good places that I like to go to, and now I'm happy that we have one here that I'll be able to visit. But there was something else that I wanted to bring up that I was made aware of today. So this past year, there was a TEDx event that was started here in Scranton, and if anyone's ever heard of the TED Talks, it's similar to that. So TEDx is a program of local self-organized events that bring people together to share a TED-like experience at a TEDx event. TED Talks video and live speakers combine to spark deep discussion and connection in a small group. And this year, they've been approved to have an event specifically for women called TEDx Scranton Women. So they are inviting women to apply to be speakers for the event. It wouldn't take place until November 29th. So applications are open until June 6th for anyone interested to apply to be a speaker for TEDx Scranton Women.
Okay, great, thank you. If you see me looking to my left, we have a gate in my kitchen, and my daughter Maeve is currently haunting me like a ghost here, yelling things out. So I just have a few announcements. The first one is council's regularly scheduled meeting, as I mentioned in the caucus, for next Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 has been rescheduled to Thursday, June 4th, 2020 due to election day. So we're going to move it from Tuesday to Thursday. If anyone would like to comment on agenda items or city business, please send those comments in writing to our city clerk, Lori Reed, by emailing lreed@scrantonpa.gov. We will accept public comment until the day of our meeting, which next week will be Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Public comment is reviewed by the council prior to our meeting and is placed on the official record and in the minutes of our meetings. Council's agenda is being posted for public review the Friday before our Tuesday meeting. Our agenda and minutes can be accessed by going to www.scrantonpa.gov and clicking on the city council page. Also, I wanted to wish a happy birthday to my good friend and a lot of people's friend in our community, Charlotte Ledbetter, a great person who does a lot for the people of the Hill section, really all over the city of Scranton. And I don't know if anybody saw it on WNEP, but they had a big birthday parade for Charlotte. I was gonna be a part of that, but then something came up. I felt badly about that, but I did want to wish her a happy birthday. Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. Fourth order, citizens participation.
Thank you. Will someone please make a motion to accept public comment from the following individuals: Bill Letwinski, Ann Camerata, Marie Schumacher, Faye Franis, Norma Jeffries, and Derek Rains.
So moved.
On the question? Just want to say a couple things. So first of all, I appreciate Mr. Letwinski, Mrs. Camerata, Ms. Schumacher, Ms. Franis, Ms. Jeffries, and Mr. Rains for submitting public comment. I want to reiterate once again that we really appreciate, especially in this time where we can't physically see people in our meetings, except for the other council members. We do appreciate the comments that we get from the public, and we do take them seriously. We take them into consideration, and any questions that we receive, we are doing our best to get those to the proper departments to be answered. I did have an opportunity to speak to the mayor today, late this afternoon briefly, and she reiterated to me that any of the questions that they have received, they are in the process of answering them. Now, in saying that, as I mentioned, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I hope that people can understand that we're not as quick in getting answers back because of everything that's going on. Many people have been furloughed, so trying to get information sometimes can take a little bit longer than we're used to. Some of the questions, though, that came up in the comments that I reviewed, I just want to touch on briefly. So Mrs. Camerata submitted public comment to all of us about the flooding on North Merrifield Avenue. And this is an issue that I am keenly aware of over the last few years. This is an issue that has just been constant. Every time we get a large rainstorm, either Mr. Cerebro or someone from that area will contact one of us, and it's just a recurring issue. And I have met with these residents on numerous occasions. But this comment here is concerning. So Mrs. Reed, if you can please forward this to the appropriate departments, I would think our city engineer, DPW, Mr. King, our city planner, and if you could copy the mayor on it. The long and short of it is a vacant property that was once owned by the city and designated as a no-build area was sold to a company a few years back. That property was sold to another party, and now that party is going to build a home there. So the neighbors here are, I think, concerned that this is going to add to the water runoff. And it is really, really severe in that area. So Mrs. Reed, if we could forward that out to the appropriate department. Ms. Schumacher asked several questions. Offhand, I don't have the information in front of me to several of them, but we will once again forward those to the appropriate departments. The one question that she had posed on why was the 2020 real estate tax levy only on land and not improvements, that was done per Mr. Bolzoni's request, the former business administrator because it would have a less punitive effect on property owners throughout the city. I'll have additional information on that. I have to go through my records and some of the comments that were made during the budget process last year, but I know that was the case. We also received a comment from Mr. Rains. Mrs. Reed, if we could forward that off to the fire department. It had something to do with fire protection programs for rental apartments in the city. And we received some other comments here regarding the waiver and other issues that we'll get to the appropriate departments. So again, appreciate everybody taking the time out to send their concerns to council. Anybody else on the question?
I'd also like to say, Bill, I'm glad that you took, you commented on some of those, because I do have some notes regarding Mrs. Camerata's request. Mrs. Schumacher had a lot of good questions, and I think so. You passed them off to the proper channels. One of them that we might be able to get was she asked that the letter from the county about the polling wards be added to third order. Is that something we could move into third order to? Yeah,
we normally, Mrs. Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, we can do that because I do think it's I don't know if we were copied on it or if we were sent that. Usually what we put in third order is anything that was sent directly to council, or if we were copied on it, and you know, it's a matter of public interest. But I think in that case, I think you're right, Councilman Schuster, that is important. So we can, Mrs. Reed, if you can include that for next week in third order, I would appreciate it.
But yeah, I mean, in regards to that stormwater, I know that we have the study and the analysis that's being done right now, and they're looking into Kaiser Creek. But I don't know, and I'm sure that watershed area there is being taken into consideration because it comes down through the Kaiser Valley Community Center, which I feel the piece of property next to that, wasn't that sold by the land bank?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I do know that at one time, the Kaiser Valley Community Center, I believe, Mrs. Reed may have a better memory on this than I do, but they received grant money or they were supposed to receive grant money to redo the parking lot, because as everybody here knows, who's from that area especially, it's every time it rains, it gets flooded. In terms of the property you're speaking of, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do know that before the last administration went out, there was discussions about conducting an overall study of that area to see what else can be done in terms of alleviating the flooding issues. So we may want to circle back and see where we're at with that.
Yeah, that right. I mean, Kaiser Valley, the community center specifically turns into a lake at this point in time. And I was under the impression that there was some money that was going to be used to do some kind of water mitigation there along if you're still looking at the front of the building to the right-hand side of it. And I know maybe after the substation was put up there, houses on Newton Road were flooded, which weren't flooded in the past, but that comes right down there from the top of Jackson Street and Price Street, coming down into the community center, and then there's pump houses also in between there, one I think on Kaiser Avenue. And then that property that Mrs. Camerata is speaking about is directly between those two. And there's that pump house that sits in the lowest section there. So, I mean, that's the way the water drains is right down there, Newton Road, Jackson Street, Kaiser Valley Community Center, into that property that she's talking about on 121 Merrifield.
Yeah, and we may want to touch base again, and the gentlemen that work for the flood control department in the city are really knowledgeable about that area as well, because they've been dealing with it for so long. I know there was improvements to the pumping station down there. There was money put aside in the budget, I believe last year and the year before, is it last year or the year before, significant upgrades from what I remember to the pumping station. But yeah, the employees in the flood control program have great knowledge of that as well. So, you know, we'll circle back with them and see where we are with that. Thank you. Anyone else?
One quick thing. What I do remember, it might have been February that this issue came up, and probably in February, and that the city engineer was supposed to do an assessment. I don't know where we're at with that, which involves that whole area.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the city engineer or if it was, I think they were looking for grant money or they had grant money. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but yeah, it was something along those lines.
Right.
So you're correct. So yeah, we'll circle back because I mean, everybody here knows every year that is a major issue over there. So thank you. Anybody else on the question?
Just real quick, one of Ms. Schumacher's questions is, when will the city join all other municipalities in the county and base the property taxes on a single assessed property value? And that's in regards to the separation of land and then structure. So, I mean, the short answer to that one is when the county performs a reassessment, because it's easier to, you know, put that into one rate based off current values, not on values, you know, from 50 years ago.
Right. Okay, good point. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. Mrs. Reed?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Councilman Schuster, do you have any motions or comments tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I had several, but we covered some of those already on the question with the last, and also in caucus. Last week during fifth order, I think I spoke about drafting correspondence with the mayor regarding the appointment of Ms. Cipriani. Two of the things in specific were payment of taxes in the city, the EIT tax, as well as having her tenure coincide with that of the mayor's. I did speak with the solicitor, and I know he spoke with the administration. He was looking at drafting some kind of legislation there with new wording. With that, and Mr. Hayes might be able to speak on that a little bit more, but with that, I think I'd feel more comfortable if that came from the mayor, per se, to reintroduce that rather than ourselves.
Councilman Schuster, per our discussion, I drafted what would be revised language for the resolution that would grant a waiver from the residency requirement, which would contain two conditions. The first condition would be that Ms. Cipriani be required, or the city rather, would withhold and pay the earned income tax for Ms. Cipriani's salary at the same rate as is withheld and paid for employees who are residents of the city. And the second condition would be that the waiver expires on January 3, 2022, which is the end of the current term for the mayor and the current administration. So I did draft language and circulated it for your review and comment, but it certainly could originate from the administration if that's where you, obviously they would have to get on board with whatever we propose in terms of that resolution.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think I'd feel more comfortable it coming from them.
Okay, so if you sign off on what I drafted, I could send that to them, or I could ask them to propose their own language, whichever you would prefer.
Anyone else on that, or anybody else want to weigh in?
Okay with that, because it initially came from administration, so I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm fine with that too, as long as I'm hoping that it's brought back here in some way. I'm glad to see that those conversations were had and that hopefully we can move forward with it. So that's great if it comes from the administration with those changes.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman Schuster?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilman McAndrew, any motions or comments?
I have a quick one. I just want to report out. I mean, we discussed it in caucus that after 5 weeks, I finally got some type of correspondence from the labor firm regarding the hours that are being generated, I guess, right now. That's the correspondence we got, generated in the form of an invoice. So I just want to report out to everybody that, you know, we should hear soon, I guess. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman McAndrew. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, I do. I have a few tonight. they're all pretty much regarding the same issue. A resident had come to me last week and asked if I could stop by their property on Sanderson Avenue to take a look at some neighboring properties that have become a problem for that neighborhood. And I was happy to do that and went by to see what the issues were. And there were plenty that are quite a concern. So I wanted to send a few correspondences to the LIPS department. First of all, there is a property at 1358 Sanderson Avenue that was condemned about a year ago. So I just wanted an update regarding that property and if there are demolitions planned, and if so, for when, to let the neighbors know. And then there are two other properties on that street. They're both owned by the same person, and those people also own two other properties in Scranton on another section of town, so 4 properties total. And I'll just describe a few of the complaints regarding the property at 1352, 1354 Sanderson Avenue. It had previously been rented out, but it hasn't been occupied since January. When those tenants left at that time, there was a lot of garbage put out in the front, as happens when renters leave properties. However, there's still litter and trash around from when they had left, including like a wet cement bag and other things that are just needlessly in the way and not attractive to the street. The property has had an issue with rats. There is a broken window, I think a broken door as well. In the backyard, there is just a stove sitting out there, a kitchen stove in the backyard. Everything is overgrown with the grass in both the backyard and the front yard. It just looks like nothing has been done with the property in a long time. And these are issues that I think the neighbors have had for quite a long time with this property, and they've asked the LIPS department about it several times, and they have not received responses on what is going on, if there's been fines to the owner. And to top it off, they also have another property on Sanderson that is also in disrepair, and they owe money on taxes and refuse bills. It looks like, let's see, for that one property at 1352, 1354, from the years 2007 to 2019, the refuse bills have not been paid. So they owe over $12,000 just on that property alone. And then the other property that they have on Sanderson Avenue at 1360 Sanderson, there's $9,600 overdue in refuse bills spanning from 2003 to 2019. So these are not responsible property owners, and I'm well aware that this is a widespread problem throughout our city and something that we have not solved, that I am very interested in working on, because we need to have pride in our city. We need to make sure that property owners, especially ones that are renting out to other people, are responsible. Not only that, but I think they had also said the renters previously told the tenants at that property previously told them that they had paid a fee for garbage to the owners, but then the owners didn't pay their garbage fees. So how that works, I have no idea. And it's just frustrating to see, a lot of neighbors, a lot of people trying to maintain their properties and to have this going on in streets. And I want to make sure that something is done about it. So I would like, if Mrs. Reed could send correspondences, one for 1358 Sanderson Avenue, as I mentioned earlier, asking if that condemned property is planned for demolition, and for any updates regarding it, and then updates on 1348, or I'm sorry, 1352 and 1354 Sanderson Avenue, if there's anything going on with those properties. And This also brings to mind the assessment that we hired Barry Isett for the LIPS department, and I would like to make a motion to request an update from both LIPS and from Barry Isett regarding the department review and where we are at with that. We did have a holdup with the contracts being signed that I remember. There was a delay from when the new Maryland administration took over, and those were signed and were supposed to be started on as of March 2nd. And 3 months or 12 weeks from March 2nd was yesterday. So I think we've had enough time, and although a lot has happened in March and April with COVID-19, I don't think that should have prevented any work on this review. So I would like to see an update on that. And I'd also like there to be a deadline included in that request for 1 week from today, which will be the 2nd of June.
Okay, there's been a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, Councilman Donahue seconded it. On the question?
On the question, would we just be able to add to that request too, just to see if, the current pandemic has affected the deliverable on that contract at all, meaning the timetable of it? And because I think a part of that was supposed to be for them to send in people anonymously to go through different processes within LIPS to assess it that way. And I don't know how the deliverable has been affected by that. So that would be my only addition to that request. It's just, it has their timeline changed at all to, due to the pandemic.
Okay. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
No? Or opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Thank you. That's all for my comments and motions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Councilman Donahue, do you have any motions or comments tonight?
Yes, just a few. Just a couple of follow-ups on some of my requests from last week. I want to thank Chief Graziano for getting back to me with an update on the status of the Sorrente Center. He responded that to date, the roof has been replaced and the exterior of the building has been sealed and some mortar repair completed. Currently, the plumbers are completing the new water service to the building, which should be completed this week. There's a signed contract in place for interior work, which involves painting, new ceiling tiles, floor refinishing, trim work, etc. So far, all the above costs have been covered by grants, and the final portion of the project is the heating and air conditioning upgrades for the office areas. There's already heat in the open bay area. This is supposed to be covered by the city energy project funding, which the chief understands has been delayed. In the meantime, we, meaning the police and fire department, are currently utilizing the building for our specialty equipment storage and for some training purposes. Even though there is a signed contract and funding in place for the interior work, that work ideally would not be completed until after the heating and air conditioning work is completed. However, right now we are waiting on the funding for that specific work before we can be 100% complete. Please let me know if there's anything further is needed. Ms. Reed, will we just be able to see what the delay is in the city energy project funding?
Sure. Yes, Councilman Donahue.
Thank you. And then just another follow-up from last week. I know we haven't received a response regarding the status of Northeast revenue, but I would just like to reiterate my position that it's completely unconscionable that a company is still under contract with the city, a company that was named in multiple federal indictments regarding political corruption and pay-to-play schemes. I know this council requested that they be terminated immediately about 9 months ago, and we're still here today, and they're still under contract as far as we know. A couple of questions I have that I hope Mrs. Reed could pass along to the fire chief. The first is in an article that appeared in the May 17th edition of the Sunday Times regarding sick time requests for city police and firefighters staying flat despite the current pandemic. there was a paragraph in the article that stated city firefighters are restricted to the fire station that they were assigned to at the time the March 13th plan went into effect. But the administration's also been browning out Truck 4 on North Mann Avenue, or shutting that station down on days when there's not enough firefighters to meet the minimum manning requirements. And those are usually filled by calling someone in for overtime. And I think that's why they're being browned out, is because they're trying to control the overtime costs. But on days when Truck 4 is shut down, it's my understanding that the remaining firefighters are all assigned to different firehouses throughout the city. So just to me, those two things sort of contradict one another. So I just would like to send a request to the fire chief, just asking to clarify how that's being handled. Also, another one for the fire chief. For over 2 years, I requested time and again a copy of the city's emergency management plan without any response, only to find out at the end of last year that the city didn't actually have an emergency management plan. This is not the fault of the current administration or the current fire chief, but it was my understanding that the new administration was going to begin the process of developing a plan. So I'd just like to request a progress report from the fire chief on where we're at in regards to the development of that plan. I'm only asking because responding to any sort of natural disaster presents its own set of challenges in normal times, but those challenges will be dramatically increased if, God forbid, the city were to have any sort of natural disaster and have to respond to that in the middle of a pandemic. So I just want to make sure that we're prepared on that front. And then finally, since the city is still in Act 47, every year the city has to petition the court of common pleas for approval to triple the LST tax. A hearing was originally set on the city's petition for March 19th, but that hearing has been delayed a few times because the courts have been closed because of the current pandemic. The problem with that then becomes the city is technically not authorized to collect the LST starting May 1st, which goes into 1/3 of the year. So you're collecting that 1/3 that you're initially authorized to collect, but then we still have to get the permission to collect the other 2/3. So it's my understanding, I believe, that the administration was putting the funds collected since May 1st into an escrow account until a hearing is held. So I'd just like to request from the administration a balance of that account to date, and also regular updates on that account balance until that petition is heard and a hearing is scheduled. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. I just have a few comments. The first is good news that council received. We had a resident of the Hill section who wrote to council to express her gratitude and offer commendation to the tree removal crew and the workers of the Scranton DPW. From May 11th to May 13th, they removed a dying center rotted tree which threatened this woman's home and vehicles for 23.5 years. She states in her letter that the workers were courteous, friendly, professional, punctual, and funny, which is always good. She writes to please extend appreciation, commendation, kudos, and recognition for the lovely job they did with such kindness and grace. She would like us to recognize these men, Supervisor Chris Jenkins, Crew Chief Kevin Iden, the crew Max Sensi, hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, Bruce Fenton, Judd Roth, Ryan Benjamin, and Justin Krakowski. So, and she states, in this time of shutdown and pandemic, they truly stood up and did a phenomenal job. So I also want to thank them. That's always good to hear, and they do a wonderful job. I also want to say that my thoughts and my prayers really go out to the family that lost their home in the plot to that tragic fire. Thank God that no lives were lost, but from what I understand, it was a close call on several fronts. So again, my thoughts go out to that family and all those families in that area who were affected and who had damage from their home. And I'd like to thank the fire department who did a wonderful job and the neighbors who stepped up to help out other neighbors. I have a few quality of life concerns that I received from residents that I'll pass along to Mrs. Reed. Resident of East Mountain is concerned about the catch basins covered with debris, so we'll send that along to DPW. 358 Ferdinand Street, I've received multiple calls about quality of life issues at that property. One of the things that I did want to mention that I think we should keep in mind, and I know I was talking to Dr. Rothchild earlier today about this, is once the warm weather starts, council gets numerous requests from the public in terms of quality of life issues. And I had a conversation with Tom Oleski, who's the director of licensing and inspections. And the one thing that I would like people to remember out there is they're taking all the concerns that are coming their way and they're prioritizing them, but since staff was furloughed, they're not at full capacity. So they're being inundated with requests and they are trying to get to them as expeditiously as possible, but that is taking, somewhat longer than they would like. Also 1452 West Locust Street, if we could just check in with DPW to see if the issues there have been taken care of yet. Also want to just once again talk very briefly about the pandemic and the coronavirus. 155 people in our community, in our county, have tragically passed away from this virus. And even though it seems as the cases are going down, and we are moving, I guess, into the yellow phase relatively soon from the red phase, this is still a very serious issue. The one thing that I want to say to people that may be watching this meeting tonight and maybe listening to it is that there are agencies and there are people out there who are willing to help you. One of the tragedies of this virus, along with the death and economic destruction it's caused, is the destruction is caused on people who don't have other family members with them or to take care of them. Reading the paper today really broke my heart. Some of the tragic stories of people who are, dying alone without anyone around them, whether it's from the coronavirus or just of natural causes or another disease. We may not see it as council members. We may not see it because, I live with my wife and my children. I'm able to communicate with people and my neighbors and being outside. But there are an awful lot of elderly people who live alone, who don't have the ability to communicate as often as they would like. And that really is one of the great tragedies of what's gone on here, because they're alone. But what I would like to tell people is that there is help out there for them, and they don't have to be alone. If they're hungry or they need help, they need some kind of support. There are several resources, and I want to mention them. And this was driven home to me today because I got a call from a very lovely woman who lives in Mulberry Towers, who watches ECTV and watches the council meetings and gets a lot of information from these meetings. So if you are in need of any sort of social service, if you're out there and you're watching and you don't have somebody to talk to, you're lonely, you're sick, whatever the case may be, you need food, you need help with something, you can pick up your phone and dial 211, and that will get you to someone to help you. You can also call 570-348-4101. That's the mayor's office. The mayor's office is taking any and all requests and will kind of funnel you to the right place if you need help. Also, if you do have access to a computer, you can email scranton311@scrantonpa.gov. I do have to say that the mayor and her administration has been very responsive to people who have emailed the address there and who have needed help in whatever form or fashion. And if you do have a computer and you can get to our city website, www.scrantonpa.gov, there are a number of resources there. There's a whole resource guide for people. There's a whole section on food resources for your utilities. So again, I know that the numbers may be going down and we're moving from one phase to another, but there's still people who need help. And I know that in my neighborhood and in other neighborhoods throughout the city, people are checking on those who are elderly in their neighborhood. who may not have the resources that we all have. So, you know, I'm really pleased with what I've been seeing as a community in terms of us sticking together and trying to ride this one out. And finally, yesterday, as everybody knows, was Memorial Day. I want to thank all of our veterans for their service and sacrifice, especially my dad, who served in the United States Marine Corps. So Semper Fi to him. And that's all I have. Mrs. Reed.
Thank you. 5B for introduction and ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a construction easement agreement between the University of Scranton and the city of Scranton to allow the city to enter the property, to remove, replace, and maintain a traffic light, the foundation and base of which are located on the property as more fully described in the construction easement attached hereto as Exhibit A, emergency certificate attached.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, for those of you who may not have been watching the caucus tonight, I just want to take a brief second to explain what this legislation is. There's a traffic light at the corner of Jefferson Avenue and Linden Street. This legislation is authorizing the city to be able to go on the property of the University of Scranton to replace and maintain that traffic light and to move the traffic light back so that it's not in the way of traffic, which has, over the last few years, cars have actually driven into this pole and caused some real destruction there and some safety issues. So this is a busy intersection. This issue is a major hazard. So the plan is to place the light set back further from the roadway as quickly as possible to protect our citizens. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
I make a motion to suspend the rules to have item 5B, to move item 5B to 6th and 7th orders based on the attached emergency certificate.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I would just like to request to the administration to maybe try to get some of these resolutions down quicker without the emergency certificate attached. I mean, if it's about, you know, responding to the current pandemic, I have no problem with it, but I don't want to get council to get in the habit of approving these things with the emergency certificate.
Anyone else on the question? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5C for introduction, an ordinance amending section 13 as amended by ordinance number 29, 1994, and ordinance number 195, 2003 of the administrative code entitled Appropriation in order to require council's approval prior to the transfer of an unexpended balance of an appropriation item to fund a new job classification or increase the budgeted salary of a job classification.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, this legislation, as I mentioned in the caucus tonight, is simply amending the administrative code to require city council's approval prior to the transfer of any unexpended balance of a line item in the budget, whether it's to fund a new job classification or to increase the budgeted salary of a job classification. And there's really two goals here. Number one, it's very important to me that this council and any future council, so those who will come after us here, to maintain our role as a check and a balance to the mayor and administration. So any future, this mayor and administration and future mayors and their administration. It's also very important that the public have a say in any changes that are going to be made in terms of increasing salaries and adding positions outside of the budgetary approval process that we all go through in November. So this legislation accomplishes both of those goals, and I want to thank Solicitor Hayes for drafting it, and I'm pleased to be voting on it tonight. Anyone else on the question?
Yes, I'd like to, mirror your comments. I agree with all of them and thank Mr. Hayes for the work he's done on this and thank council for pushing this through and thank Mr. Hayes for the other work that he's doing for us as well.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that we'll have the power, or maybe I shouldn't say power, but when there's money left over or there's extra money, why does it have to go to a salary or a creative position? Why can't we just have some savings for once and realize these savings instead of trying to give it to somebody? So I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, formerly 5B, reading by title, filed with Council Number 8, 2020. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a construction easement agreement between the University of Scranton and the City of Scranton to allow the city to enter the property to remove, replace, and maintain a traffic light, the foundation and base of which are located on the property as more fully described in the construction easement attached hereto as Exhibit A, emergency certificate attached.
Thank you. You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption. Resolution number 31, 2020, appointment of Amber Viola, 1512 Ross Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18509, to the position of Director of Human Resources, effective May 18, 2020.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A. Is there a second?
Second.
It's getting a little nervous there. On the question? Okay, on the question, I just want to welcome Ms. Viola to the position of HR Director. She certainly has her work cut out for her, but I think she's up to the task, and I wish her the best of luck in this position. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please. Sorry, I have to unmute Ms. Carrera.
Yep.
Roll call, please. Sorry.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, resolution number 32, 2020. Appointment of Thomas A. Priambo, 510 Dean Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18509, to the position of Director of the Department of Public Works, effective May 25, 2020.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question? On the question, again, I just want to wish Mr. Priambo the best of luck. I'm certain that he's going to do a wonderful job as well. And I want to thank Director Gallagher, and I want to thank May for standing at the gate here tonight. Thank Director Gallagher for his service over the past few years. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, resolution number 33, 2020, appointment of Eileen Cipriani, 117 Washington Avenue, West Wyoming, Pennsylvania, 18644, to the position of Executive Director of the City of Scranton's Office of Economic and Community Development, effective May 18, 2020. Ms. Cipriani will be replacing Mary Pat Ward, who was serving as Executive Director.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question? Yes, on the question, I want to welcome Ms. Cipriani. I think she's going to do an outstanding job. I also want to thank Mary Pat Ward for her work as OECD director. She was always very open with council and willing to respond to any of our requests. And I thought she did a very nice job. Anyone else on the question? Ms. Carrera, roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, formerly 6A, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption. File of the Council number 8, 2020, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a construction easement agreement between the University of Scranton and the City of Scranton to allow the city to enter the property to remove, replace, and maintain a traffic light, the foundation and base of which are located on the property as more fully described in the construction easement attached hereto as Exhibit A, emergency certificate attached.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chair for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please, Ms. Carrera.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Gaughan, could I say one thing before we end?
Sure.
Sorry for the lateness of this.
No, that's okay.
I did get an announcement that came in late. The Scranton Cultural Center is going to host a community blood drive by the American Red Cross, and the drive is set for May 27th and 28th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the Grand Ballroom.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, that's really important. Anyone else? Okay, if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.